What is going on, Dodger fans? Thank you guys for tuning in to a Friday edition of the Klein Dodgers podcast. We are presented by Fanduel, TickPick, and BLEAV Network. Kevin Klein here, joined by Justin Llamas, who I'll give the floor to in just a second. But we have a lot to talk about today. MLB spring training is about a week away. Dodgers making roster moves left and right here on a Friday morning and early afternoon. So we're going to dive into all that. A two-time World Series champion relief pitcher was just DFA'd. We'll give you the scoop on that momentarily. But me and Justin, we want to start with the biggest story going around all of Major League Baseball right now, and that involves two-time reigning Cy Young Award winner Tarik Skubal, who won his arbitration hearing with the Detroit Tigers. He wanted about $32 million. The Tigers had offered him roughly $19 million. The jury was on Skubal's side, essentially, because he got his way, full $32 million. Justin, how you doing? I'm going to pass it off to you to give the listeners more in-depth details on all this.
Good afternoon, Kevin. In my case, good evening. Thanks for having me on. Yes, that was the story the entire week. Tarik Skubal winning his arbitration case. He asked for 32 mil. Detroit thought they were giving a traditional value of 90 mil. Actually, it was less than the record for a pitcher, which was set 11 years ago when they themselves had David Price. They settled on 19.75 mil. So they even went below that. So the midpoint was 25.5 mil. All Tarik Skubal and his camp had to do was to prove he was one penny more than the midpoint. And if you look at David Price's salary back in 2015, his last year before he hit free agency, what was I going to say? Yes, with inflation, it was going to be about 28.75 mil. So I thought that made it a lot easier for him to argue against the jury. And also it provides pardon me. So now we're going to see arbitration salaries increase a lot. It'll be kind of an umbrella for pitchers of Tarik Skubal's caliber and also hitters of that high caliber, and I guess you could say lesser players as well. So it'll be interesting to see when Paul Skeens gets eligible for arbitration, which is next year. Maybe we'll see if that means Bob Nutting is going to trade him sooner rather than later. And also for Tarik Skubal, what also helped him was he was in his final year of arbitration. And in the CBA, if you're in your last year of arbitration, you're allowed to compare yourself to any free agent pitcher or any free agent hitter in the open market. So for example, we saw Zach Wheeler, his AAV was 42 million. We saw Jacob deGrom, his AAV was 37 mil. Garrett Cole at 36 mil. So Tarik Skubal, coming off back-to-back Cy Young awards, all he had to do was prove that he was closer to that number. Probably he was better than these type of pitchers. He's more comparable to these pitchers than rather an outdated salary, which was 11 years ago. What do you say about the arbitration case? Maybe you want to talk about Detroit a little bit, or the Dodgers fans?
I definitely have a few thoughts from the Tigers' perspective, baseball's perspective, and of course the Dodgers' perspective. So let me just start with just baseball's perspective in general. A guy getting $32 million in arbitration hits exactly to the point that you were alluding to a minute ago about a guy like Paul Skeens when he starts to get into arbitration eligible years. We're now looking at a new floor potentially where if you win back-to-back Cy Youngs, you best believe that if the next guy is in that similar situation as Skubal, that guy's going to get $30+ million as well a couple years into arbitration. Maybe not the first or second year, but when we get to the latter half of those arbitration control years, you're going to see some salary escalators for sure. So it kind of makes it interesting for like small market or cheaper teams that have a reputation like a Pirates, throw in a Padres, whatever, the cheap teams out there. Do they trade those guys sooner rather than later? It's definitely going to be something to monitor. We don't have that answer right now, but if you have a guy that's promising and looks to be a potential two-time or even just a single Cy Young Award winner, it's no longer that $19 million floor. We're talking about potentially $30+ million, which is what Skubal was able to do. From the Detroit Tigers perspective, these rumors were already squashed for over a month anyways. Skubal to the Dodgers just was not happening. And the Detroit Tigers made a massive signing with Framber Valdez a couple days prior to this arbitration hearing. They gave him, I think, 3 years, $115 million, something roughly along those numbers, with opt-outs after the second year. The Detroit Tigers are going all in my opinion. The only way that the Tigers are to deal Skubal around the deadline, they would have to be significantly underperforming. We're talking many games below 500 and not even in a wild card berth, which is hard for me to envision right now if they're healthy and these players perform up to their expectations. I think the Detroit Tigers are going to win the AL Central, to be honest. And then the last point I wanted to quickly make, and then back to you, Justin. And for those tuning in, don't forget to hit the like button. Those like buttons go a long way for us. Appreciate everyone in the live chat right now. And you can ask us questions along the way as well. Skubal getting $32 million in arbitration. So what does that tell you about Skubal when he enters free agency? You're probably looking at an AAV that's going to smash past 32 million, because I doubt he's going to go down in annual average salary. I would expect him probably to make 40 million a year if I had to guess. I don't know if it's going to be 9 years or 10 years, but I think Skubal is going to probably be fetching around 40 million AAV.
Yeah, so more details about the decision here. Because Skubal won his arbitration case, now we're seeing a record raise. First, last year his salary was 10 million. Now it has jumped to 32 million, 22 million. That's a raise that was basically unheard of. The previous record was 9.5 million set by DeGrom back in, I believe, 2019. And that's the record for the highest paid player in arbitration eligible that broke Juan Soto's record in 2024 when he got 31 mil from the Yankees. And yes, like what you said, Detroit has pretty much they've signified that they're going to go all in. I don't know if that was a stylistic choice or whatever, or they kind of had to do it because they ended up losing the Skubal arbitration case. But they ended up signing Framber Valdez. He's going to be the highest paid lefty in terms of AAV, 3 years, 115. So they added that to the books. They Gleyber Torres rather, he accepted the qualifying offer, so that's 22 million extra in the books. And they already have Javi Baez, they already have Jack Flaherty, and now with Tarik Skubal making 32 million, Detroit is a luxury tax paying team. They see it as, this is our last dance with Tarik Skubal. We're gonna lose him no matter what. The AL Central is weak. We can do enough to win this division. I know they blew a 16-game lead in the division last year, but they feel that the division is weak enough for them to go for it, whether we believe that or not. And Detroit is prepared to lose him in free agency. His agent is Scott Boras. Scott Boras wants to take his clients to the open market. Regardless, negotiations did not go quite well for Tarik Skubal. There were reports Detroit was offering, 4 years, 80 mil, and there was a 250 million gap. I think John Heyman said it. But it seems that they went to arbitration because there was going to be no long-term relationship between them. Tarik Skubal was 100% set on free agency. Detroit was set on losing him. So we'll see what happens when he goes to the open market, whether it's LA, the two New York clubs, Toronto. If the Dodgers want to get Tarik Skubal, they're going to have to get him in free agency.
I see some great questions, and thank you, Justin, for that as well. See some great questions regarding Ben Rortvedt and Dalton Rushing, and we'll go into the order of sequence anyways, which actually technically started with Ben Rortvedt. So let's do that. So first from Lucy Chen, what do you think of Rushing's position now that Ben Rortvedt is back? So let me catch you guys up real quick in case you have not heard the news. The Cincinnati Reds had DFA'd Ben Rortvedt, I think within the last couple days. It was to make room for the Eugenio Suarez signing. And I guess the Reds felt they didn't need Ben Rortvedt as their backup catcher. I'm not too familiar with their catching depth chart off the top of my head at the moment. I believe Tyler Stevenson is one of their catchers. I'm blanking on who the other guy is, but
yeah, I'm blanking too. I don't follow their roster. I can check quickly through Fangraphs.
Yeah, well, you do that, but nonetheless, So he was DFA'd. The Dodgers put in a claim, and they won the claim today. They added Ben Rortvedt back to their 40-man roster. Ironically enough, to kind of kick off the offseason, the Dodgers had DFA'd Ben Rortvedt, who was then claimed by the Reds. Now the Dodgers get Ben Rortvedt back. This is kind of similar to the Michael Ciani situation, which we'll get to that later on. But Ben Rortvedt, in my opinion, this is a plus add. I mean, this is a guy that filled in beautifully when Will Smith went down, and not only just defensively and in terms of just game calling and having synergy with his pitchers, Ben Rortvedt also kind of raked randomly for the Dodgers, even though statistically coming in with the Rays prior, he was not a good hitter, but he had some big hits in the playoffs. He was driving in runs. He easily outperformed Dalton Rushing and actually passed him up on the depth chart. Ben Rortvedt became their starting catcher when the wild card round swung around, and he was starting those games for the Dodgers and early on against the Phillies as well, I believe, until Will Smith was healthy. But all the pitchers raved about him. Great clubhouse guy. You've heard nothing but positive things about Ben Rortvedt. Now getting to the questions, and I'll get to all of those in a second. I don't think it's a slam dunk now that Dalton Rushing opens on the Dodgers roster come opening day. I can actually see there will be some legitimate competition between Ben Rortvedt and Dalton Rushing for that last spot. And in a weird way, this kind of hurts Dalton Rushing because he's got the minor league options. And if I'm not mistaken here, because Ben Rortvedt's been DFA'd a few times, it's because he doesn't have minor league options.
He has no options.
But what are your thoughts on, this whole Ben Rortvedt coming back?
To answer your first question, Cincinnati's backup catcher is Jose Trevino. They traded for him last year in the
Yankees
Fernando Cruz trades. Yes, with the Yankees, correct. We saw him in the World Series, Jose Trevino.
Exactly.
So, yes, I agree with you. I do not believe it is a slam dunk that Dalton Rushing is going to start on the Major League roster. We saw him this year. His bat didn't exactly play up. Of course, he had very limited playing opportunities. So it is possible that he could start the year in AAA to get more at-bats, and Ben Rortvedt will be the backup catcher. Yes, what makes this complicated is Ben Rortvedt does not have options. So if the Dodgers wanted to move off of Ben Rortvedt, they would have to designate him for assignment, trade him, waive him, whatever it is. But they cannot just send him an optional assignment down to AAA while keeping him on the 40-man roster. In fact, that's exactly how they got Ben Rortvedt. They got him as non-roster depth in a trade with Tampa Bay. They had to select him once all the catchers last year went down with injury.
Yep. Yeah, so this is interesting for the Dodgers' perspective because could they roll the dice and then DFA Ben Rortvedt again, and then this time hope that no team puts in a claim for him? I mean, kind of like logically speaking, because the Dodgers were last this most recent time on the waiver wire and they ended up with Ben Rortvedt, you would think that they might be able to get away with this. Except in the back of my mind, my thought process is there's probably a team or two out there that would just put a claim in on Ben Rortvedt to spite the Dodgers. I feel like that is, ultimately in the cards. Right now, I don't have a definitive answer with what the Dodgers plan to do with Ben Rortvedt. I have a hard time envisioning them keeping him on the MLB roster for this full 2026 season. It's just hard for me to envision that because that means Dalton Rushing is getting essentially no playing time unless an injury happens. And so for the Dodgers right now, when it comes to Ben Rortvedt, they have a couple things to decide. They could, like I just said, DFA Ben Rortvedt tomorrow and hope he goes through waivers and then outright him off the roster and he'd be essentially, quote unquote, part of Oklahoma City. And I think part of the Dodgers thinking here is nonetheless, you get a really good guy in the minors because the Dodgers catching depth chart right now in AAA isn't very good. I think it's still Chucky Robinson, who's been proven to not be anything. Chris Oakey might still be in the house, but Ben Rortvedt clears both of them. But this also puts, I think, a little bit of pressure now on Dalton Rushing to actually perform well during spring training. And I think the Dodgers have a few in-house candidates where they're still evaluating positions. And I guess Dalton Rushing now falls into that mix of maybe your spot isn't as secure as we initially thought. And so we have a question from Brazukal. Does this mean Dalton Rushing will be involved in a trade? The Dodgers can't keep 3 catchers on the roster for long. And so for the latter part, I agree. I don't think the Dodgers are going to carry 3 catchers on their opening day roster or the first couple months of the season. I have a hard time seeing that. Do I think Dalton Rushing could be involved in a trade? I don't know. I think we need to let it play out in spring training and maybe the early part of the season. What do you think?
Yes, I do not believe that they will carry 3 catchers on the opening day roster, especially if one of the catchers does not have minor league options. The Dodgers like to, I guess for lack of a better word, manipulate the active roster by having guys with options, sending them up down between AAA and the big league club. So it'll be very interesting to see it. Yes, Dalton Rushing's spot isn't very secure, especially because we saw his lack of hitting last year. Obviously, he needs more playing time, but it is the Dodgers. It is the toughest active roster, the toughest 40-man roster, and the toughest active roster to crack into. And it is such a win-now team, an extreme win-now team, that young players aren't really given the time to fail. Essentially, you have to hit the ground running, essentially, if you want to play on this squad. So if Dalton Rushing does not get out to a strong start in spring training, we could probably see him getting sent down to Oklahoma City for reps just because he has options and Rortvedt doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I'm at. And then the last question, and to kind of wrap up Ben Rortvedt, from Tark the Shark, does Rushing start the season in the minors to keep Rortvedt on the roster? We kind of already hitting on that, but to kind of conclude that question, we just don't know right now. I think they're going to let this play out in spring training, and they're going to see how Dalton Rushing looks before they ultimately make a roster decision. Ben Rortvedt, he has the intangibles, but if they were to DFA him tomorrow, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Right. Backup catchers is probably one of the easiest positions to replace in Major League Baseball, in my opinion. I'm not going to judge a roster on their backup catcher at all, to be honest. It's nice to have someone that can really fill in, and especially with Will Smith trying to optimize his rest. But for now, Ben Rortvedt versus Dalton Rushing, it doesn't really feel like there's much of a needle mover there. Either one of them, I think, could fulfill the same role. But I don't know if Dalton Rushing is a lock to make opening day anymore at this point. We have to see how he looks in spring training. I like the Rortvedt decision to bring back. I do like that move, I will say.
Yes, I agree with the decision to bring back Ben Rortvedt. The only thing we have to notice about Ben Rortvedt is he isn't particularly a great hitter. We saw that from his career stats. The main reason why he ran out of minor league options, why he's outrighted, was because of his lack of hitting as well. So the only thing that's really keeping Ben Rortvedt over Dalton Rushing, well, 2 things. One is obviously the options, but 2 was his ability to manage a pitching staff. We saw how last year a lot of the pitchers, they raved about Ben Rortvedt's game calling. And it isn't until Dalton Rushing's hitting vastly outweighs Ben Rortvedt's game calling, then it isn't a sure thing that Dalton Rushing is going to make the roster over Ben Rortvedt, who in that case would be DFA'd.
Right. So I see more questions. We'll get to those questions in a little bit. I want to now switch players and focus on. So the Dodgers added Ben Rortvedt. That means you have to get rid of somebody. And unfortunately for Anthony Banda, he is that casualty today. So I'm not trying to victory lap. I'm not trying to kick someone while they're down. But if you had been listening to this show throughout the offseason, and hit that like button and subscribe button if you're new, I've been telling you that Anthony Banda was most likely going to be cut at some point this offseason. It's not necessarily a hit on his talent and what he brings to this Dodgers bullpen, but the writing was just on the walls with what they currently had roster construction wise. And on top of that, the fact that Anthony Banda does not have minor league options puts the Dodgers in a situation where they're going to need to make a sacrifice here or there so that they have that roster versatility. And the reason you want that roster versatility and that flexibility is you see it all the time during the regular season. You see someone maybe go down and all of a sudden it turns into a bullpen game. Well, they might need a fresh arm that next day, or somebody's been pitching 3 days in the last 4 games and they need a little time off. You can manipulate sending someone down to the minors and calling up a fresh arm. The issue is if you have a bunch of guys on your 40 or on your active 26-man roster that have no minor league options, then how are you going to, manipulate a need? And you look across the table, you've got Diaz, never going to the minors. Scott, never going to the minors. Trinan, never going to the minors. Vesia, never going to the minors. And the list goes on and on. You need a couple guys in there that you can squeeze and send down here or there. Anthony Banda has no minor league options. It was his time. And on top of that, the Dodgers were very left-handed heavy in their bullpen. Very rarely do you see a team carry 5 lefties in their bullpen for the duration of their season. Look at who they have. I mean, they've got Tanner Scott, who's presumed to be at the top. Bounce back candidate, obviously, but they gave him a huge contract. He'll probably be their top high leverage guy. You've got Alex Vesia, who's been about as good as any Dodgers high leverage reliever over the last 4 or 5 years. Another lefty. Slot those two ahead of him automatically. Jack Dreyer, as a rookie, came onto the scene and essentially established himself not only as a high leverage reliever, but he moved ahead of Anthony Banda in the depth charts as well. They went to Dreyer over Banda in key situations, especially in the playoffs. And then lastly, his role is to be determined still, but you can pretty much assume Justin Robleski, another left-handed relief option, coming out of the Dodgers bullpen unless they decide to start him. But I think he's going to mostly be a reliever. And Robleski pitched better than Anthony Banda, especially down the stretch. And they used him in pivotal moments in the playoffs, the World Series, game 7, if I'm not mistaken. All better than Anthony Banda. And so I'll leave it at that and let you speak, Justin, and then I'll circle back with some more points.
So we saw the beginning of the end of Anthony Banda in game 1 when he gave up the grand salami to, is it Barger? I think he gave the grand slam to.
Pinch hitter.
And yeah, exactly. And ever since then, he's already been surpassed on the depth chart by Dreyer and Robleski. Both have options. They also have Ronan Cup, whom they selected from to the 40-man roster to protect him for the Rule 5 draft back in November. Maybe they want to give him a shot, and they need the roster flexibility. But Anthony Banda, obviously, he's on the fringe. He's been a journeyman reliever. There's a reason why he's out of options, and they're not gonna cut Tanner Scott with all the money given to him. They're not gonna cut Alex Vesia. He's in his walker before he heads to free agency. So if they already have 4 lefties in the bullpen, 5 if you count Robleski. So yes, it made total sense that Anthony Banda at some point was going to get DFA'd. It seems like the Ryan Brazier move last year, and the Dodgers felt like they got the 2 best years out of Anthony Banda, like how the Dodgers felt that they got the 2 best years out of Ryan Brazier. He was excellent for us in 2023, didn't get the same success in 2024. And then, which is funny, by the way, Ryan Brazier just signed a contract with Texas. I don't know if it is a major league or minor league deal, but I wanted to point that out. And that could be the case for Anthony Banda. We could see some regression from him, depending on where he goes. If he is, I believe he will get claimed, or they'll trade something for him like they did with Ryan Brazier. If he clears waivers, which I don't believe is likely, but in the case that he does, the club could outright him. And he has money attached to him. I believe it is, I don't know if it is $1.5 million, I believe. But he has money attached to him, and he has less than 5 years of service time. So if he wants to reject that assignment and go to free agency, he would have to forfeit that money to to exercise it right, because you need 5 years to reject an outright assignment and keep all your money. So it'll be very interesting to see what will happen with Anthony Banda. Thank you for your service. I knew it was very popular among the fans. Probably
Yeah.
he was more popular for, I think, when you go shirtless, he has his ink on his body and all that stuff. He's more popular for that than his actual pitching or his mask that he wears. But yeah, thank you for everything, Anthony Banda. You did okay for your service here. It is time to give other people a shot, especially since guys like Dreyer, Robleski have already surpassed them in the depth chart, and they have options too, and they need to grow within this organization. Anthony Banda, we know what he is, but Robleski and Dreyer, they're young enough for us to see that they still have room for growth, and they need to be in the major leagues. They have nothing to prove in the minors.
Yeah, Anthony Banda was a success, no doubt about it, for the Dodgers. I mean, he was DFA'd from his previous team. I think it was the Guardians. The Dodgers scooped him up in the early part of 2024 and turned him into a very serviceable, high leverage reliever that helped them win 2 championships. So no matter what, Anthony Banda goes down as a 2-time World Series champion and had a number of great moments in Dodger blue.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. I think he's going to get scooped up, claimed, or traded for cash considerations potentially. But just because the Dodgers DFA Anthony Banda, it doesn't mean necessarily that he's going to walk away for nothing. They've got about a week, I believe, for a team to make an offer and they can trade him. I do think he's going to go somewhere else immediately, nonetheless, because like you were talking about, fairly cheap reliever, $1.5 million salary, roughly. Obviously has experience pitching in the postseason. There's a shortage of solid lefties out there in general.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sure he'll fit the need elsewhere. Can't really tell you what team it's going to be per se. But for those freaking out and questioning the Dodgers and you're shocked, like, I honestly just don't get how. Like, first of all, I'm going to trust Andrew Friedman and Brandon Gomes to make the right decisions when it comes to relief pitchers, because they've proven time after time again that they're more often right than wrong. And I just don't think we're going to look back at this moment and kick ourselves and say, oh, shoot, if we had Anthony Banda on this team, things would go completely different. I have a really hard time envisioning that happen. 2025 was a rocky road for Anthony Banda. I mean, his first half was a struggle. He had a 4.14 ERA. Not going to take away credit from him. He had a good second half. He had a 1.52 ERA. But when we shifted to the postseason, I remember them saying why they left him off the wild card roster against the Cincinnati Reds is they essentially said something to an extent that they just felt it was a bad matchup for him, and they didn't really trust him against the Cincinnati Reds in a wild card round. And then he pitched like maybe an inning against the Phillies. They didn't use him at all in that series. Hardly pitched against the Brewers as well. And then against the Toronto Blue Jays, he gave up 6 earned runs over 3 innings. He was just awful. Gave up the grand slam to a pinch hitting Addison Barger. It just was not a good October for Anthony Banda, nonetheless. But overall for the Dodgers, he pitched. Where is it? Just had it in front of me. So yeah, he pitched 2 seasons for the Dodgers, ended up having a 3.14 ERA, which you'll take easily, the best baseball reference WAR of anywhere else he had, a 1.4 WAR. His next highest was 0.1 because he was essentially a 0 or negative for any other team he went to. So the fact that they squeezed a 1.4 out of him, they got 114 good innings, a 4.15 FIP. Solid stuff from Anthony Banda, who, to his credit, was highly effective against left-handed hitters. But when we live in a 3-batter minimum rule league, he did struggle against righties. He had a 700 plus OPS against him last season. So I'm not going to lose sleep over of Anthony Banda going elsewhere. He also just struggled in the postseason as well. A 1.5 WHIP, a 5.20 FIP. So there was definitely some blemishes for Banda, but good for him. Friedman hit the nail, and he had a home run, fleece, low cost, high reward move for Banda for 2 seasons. You're on mute.
Pardon, I'm on mute. The fact that they got anything out of him is a miracle, because we've seen dudes like who had no options, who are being passed around like hot potatoes. Like we've seen Johan Ramirez, we've seen Eliezer Hernandez, we've seen dudes like that. Last year, Chris Stratton, we've seen guys like that. They tried to bring them and they were ineffective. They got cut eventually, DFA'd. So one thing we should know is out of option players are the most susceptible to being DFA'd, because they cannot be sent down to the minors while still being on the 40-man roster. So it made sense that Anthony Banda was going to be a casualty at some point rather than later. It is just an absolute miracle that they got something out of a journeyman reliever. And by the way, do you know what we traded to get Anthony Banda?
I can't remember.
Cash considerations. And he was even on a minor league contract at the time when we traded for him when Cleveland traded him to us for cash. We had to select him to the 40-man roster. That's how I recall. He was not even on the 40-man roster. He was on a minor league contract when we got him.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you made a good comp, and it is the comp. It's the Ryan Brazier treatment. Ryan Brazier was starting NLDS games for the Dodgers against the San Diego Padres, and I think the Mets as well, for that matter. I think he started game 2, and then he was the one that gave up the first run. I think he gave up a home run to Lindor that snapped our scoreless streak that carried over from the Padres series. And then Landon Knack eventually came in, and we lost game 2. We got blown out.
He gave up a salami.
Yep, to Vientos. But yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. Veteran, no options. You have to make tough cuts. The Dodgers bullpen is deep. Is it the best in the league right now? No. Would I like to see them maybe make a couple upgrades here and there? But you have a full season, and this is what Andrew Friedman thrives at. He finds guys that get DFA'd or end up a free agent somehow, and he'll put a claim in, he'll sign them to a minor league deal. So give Friedman time. He's going to find reinforcements. I'm not panicked at all. I mean, the bullpen is just deep right now. Gratterall potentially is going to be ready for opening day. I think Edgardo Henriquez is going to play a huge pivotal role for the Dodgers this upcoming season. I'm high on Will Klein. I think Will Klein's going to be a big factor and maybe supplant for Evan Phillips while he's out. Kyle Hurt, he's been out for basically 2 years. I think Kyle Hurt's going to have a huge role. They've got options. They've got a lot of guys in-house. So
yeah, and out of options, pardon me for interrupting.
No,
but yeah, out of options relievers are the easiest to replace. They're the easiest to find on the waiver market, because there are just so many of them. And by the way, Ryan Brazier, I believe he was starting a game where we were about to be eliminated in the first round for a third year in a row. I believe it was game 4 against San Diego, if I'm not mistaken. We had a bullpen game. He started it. We ended up winning that game. We rallied against San Diego. The rest is history. Yes, they have a lot of depth down in the minors. I don't know if they're gonna use them as starters or as relievers, whatever. We have 3 guys who are coming back from major surgery. Gavin Stone coming off shoulder. Kyle Hurt coming off Tommy John. I believe River Ryan is also coming off Tommy John. They're not getting any younger. Each of the pitchers that I've listed is at least 27 years old. Of course, Landon Knack is also there. I don't know what role they have for him. It's his last option year, and I don't see him being part of the organization longer than past this season anyway, because I believe they're going to keep him down in the minors and then burn his final option year, and then either DFA him, outright him, trade him, whatever the case is, like what they did with guys like James Outman. But yes, there will always be a lot of depth in the minors, and Anthony Banda was pretty replaceable, and there's always something you can find on the the waiver market when it comes to out of options relievers. Not many of them are gonna fail, probably 80%, 90%. But if you find one gem, that's all you need. For example, you remember when we got Evan Phillips back in 2021, right?
Yep.
He was he was on waivers, he was out of options, and the fact that we landed him on waivers pretty much tells you that 28 other clubs passed on him. Everybody, and then when it came to us, of course, San Francisco had a better record than us that year in 2021. But basically 28 other clubs passed on Evan Phillips. He had to pitch really damn well to stay on this roster for as long as he did. Of course, we know that he got non-tendered. Maybe they re-sign him once roster spots open in spring training next week. But yes, best of wishes to Anthony Banda. As you can tell, I'm rambling a bit.
Yeah, they find guys like this most recent season. They milked Lou Trevino for a little bit.
Yep.
Alexis Diaz was pitching innings for them.
Matt Sauer.
And although Diaz didn't work out, he led to Edwin Diaz, so that was a win in itself.
Yes.
Craig Osterberg asking us who's going to be the Dodgers opening day second baseman, and I'm going to tie this now into what's up with Andy Ibanez. But to hit on the question first, this is still up in the air because, first of all, we don't have exact confirmation if Tommy Edman is out for opening day. The initial assumption, just based off what he's been saying in the early reports, is it's highly likely he will be on the IL to start the season. But until the Dodgers make that official, it's all just speculation at this point, as Tommy Edman's recovering from the ankle surgery that is going to help him, so he says. But for now, I mean, my guess is Miguel Rojas is probably the front runner. Because you're just asking about opening day. Well, Miguel Rojas hit arguably the biggest home run, or if not just one of the biggest home runs in Dodgers franchise history. Are you really going to rob Miguel Rojas of a starting lineup introduction in his last season? Dave Roberts is like the ultimate narratives guy. So I'd be kind of shocked, to be honest. And I don't remember if they're playing at home. I think they're playing at home.
At home, Arizona.
Yes. Couldn't remember if it was in Phoenix, but I thought it was at home against the Diamondbacks. And that just adds more fuel to the fire that are you really going to leave Miguel Rojas out of the opening day starting lineup? A chance for him to get, first of all, an opportunity to start an opening day, get the reception from the Dodger fans for the first time because they haven't been home since that home run, because that home run was on the road against the Blue Jays. So my guess is Miguel Rojas starts, but if they, make this an open competition, his son Kim and Alex Freeland will definitely be battling it out. And you can't really lean one way or the other. Kim so far has had more major league success than Freeland, but you can't really just lock anyone in right now. But I think it's between those three guys I mentioned, with, for me, Rojas leading the pack.
I agree, dear. I was gonna say Rojas as well, and to go back to a previous point, I believe Miguel Rojas had the most important home run in Dodger history, even more important than Kirk Gibson, even more important than either Freddie Freeman's home runs against New York and against Toronto, more important than Max Muncy 18 innings against Boston, because we were 4 strikes away from losing that game and losing the series, and Miguel Rojas had what I believe one home run from September till the end of the season, and he hit the most important home run in our season. That's pretty much our Bucky Dent moment, the Yankees 1978. So people who don't really know Miguel Rojas as a home run hitter is going to remember him. They're going to think he's a home run hitter because of that home run. And I believe he is going to start for opening day, because we've seen Miguel Rojas. He's actually been very competent with the bat for what we expect out of him the last 2 years. The first year he was here, he had to start opening day because Gavin Lux tore his ACL. Unfortunately, Rojas wasn't very good. But in 24 and 25, with limited playing time, mainly hitting only against lefties, he was very, very great. And I believe he's going to start over Freeland and Kim. Freeland and Kim are probably going to be both on the bench, especially since they DFA'd Andy Ibanez. He's now off with Oakland right now.
Yep.
And so Oh yeah, the nameless A's. Pardon me. They're blank. West Sacramento, whatever it is. En route to Las Vegas. But yes, thanks for correcting me. So Andy Ibanez getting leaving the organization pretty much gives an open spot to Hyesung Kim and Alex Freeland, both who have options, by the way, and of course, so they're probably going to be two of the four guys on the bench. Of course, there's the backup catcher and then the outfielder, who's probably going to be Alex Call. But yes, to answer your question briefly, it'll be Miguel Rojas starting at second base on opening day against Arizona at home.
So that now brings us to Andy Ibanez, as this never-ending saga just continues to roll on. So to recap, the Dodgers claimed Michael Ciani from the Cardinals. He was DFA'd, so we add him to our active roster. And then the Dodgers DFA Michael Ciani. I think it was for Ryan Fitzgerald. Can't quite remember the sequence, but they add this guy from the Twins. Then that same day, I believe, they signed Andy Ibanez to a $1.2 million MLB contract. And then DFA Fitzgerald, he actually clears waivers and is within the Dodgers minor league depth chart organization right now. And then the Yankees claim Michael Ciani. A few days go by. They then DFA Michael Ciani. And apparently the Dodgers just are allured and have an obsession with Michael Ciani, because then they claim him back. And the 40-man roster is full. And so out of nowhere, I think kind of to our surprise, they then DFA Andy Ibanez, which is where we're going to get to the whole Andy Ibanez part now. And I'm confused, to be honest, not about just letting go of Andy Ibanez, to be honest. I could care less about him. I didn't think he was going to be anything that great for us anyways. Maybe you can help me figure this out, Justin, but why would they sign Andy Ibanez to an MLB contract and then DFA him a few weeks later for a guy like Michael Ciani?
So this is very similar to what happened with Ben Rortvedt. They give a major league contract and they try to see if they can pass through waivers, because like Ben Rortvedt, Andy Ibanez does not have minor league options. So in that case, whoever had to roster Andy Ibanez has to put him on the 40-man roster, and once opening starts, place him on the 26-man active roster. And the Dodgers thought that a lot of teams are not going to take a shot at that with that $1.2 million salary, and then so they'd be able to outright him. And like we said before with Ben Rortvedt and Anthony Banda, because he has less than 5 years of service time, he would have to forfeit a salary to reject an outright assignment in favor of free agency. And yes, the timeline is very, very unique. They claimed Ryan Fitzgerald off of waivers, and that made their roster full. They figured they're probably going to send him down to the minor leagues because he's a 31-year-old utility infielder who can't really hit. And because the fact that the Dodgers were able to get him on waivers, they thought that pretty much most clubs will not claim him of waivers either, because they're like 4 teams ahead behind us with better records in the regular season. So they figured they were able to slip him through waivers, which they did. They DFA'd Ryan Fitzgerald to get Andy Ibanez, and then eventually they signed Kyle Tucker. And then the corresponding was Ciani was designated for assignments. And then to claim Ciani back from New York, they designated Andy Ibanez. And unfortunately, they were not able to outright him because he had been claimed. And of course, now they claim Ben Rortvedt back from waivers, and the corresponding was Anthony Banda. So yeah, very, very interesting. They're pretty much recycling players back and forth. These guys don't know where to report in spring training, which happens in about a week.
I think there's a lot of validity to what you were saying. I'm just a little confused why the Dodgers would, and why Andy Ibanez, to be honest, would agree to this. You get the guaranteed money. That makes sense to me. You get the $1.2 million. But why would you want to start the season in the minors if he feels like he's an MLB caliber player? And clearly the Dodgers, I think where they maybe kind of bluffed wrong, I guess. Maybe they thought if they gave him $1.2 million, that would deter other teams from wanting to put a claim in on him. But I mean, that's not that much money at the end of the day. And if his market was hot, I guess, quote unquote, if there were other teams trying to get in on Anthony Ibanez, then wouldn't they have expected that once they DFA'd him, he was going to get picked up regardless anyways? So the whole timeline is just kind of like melting my brain and just confusing me. And I just don't know if I believe that the Dodgers were initially trying to sign him to then DFA him, or it's they signed him and then reevaluated some things and essentially had a change of heart and decided, you know what, maybe Anthony Ibanez doesn't make a lot of sense for a big league roster.
I'm probably 60%. I'm leaning 60-40. 60% they were trying to sign him to and then outright him to the minors for more depth in the minors. And then the other 40% it could be they signed Andy Ibanez and then they didn't think they were going to get Kyle Tucker. We were losing the Kyle Tucker sweepstakes pretty much until the day of, and then we finally got him from Toronto. It was like Game 7. We were trailing the entire game until Miguel Rojas hit the home run, and then of course the rest is history. But I do believe, they were trying to sign Andy Ibanez and try to outright him to the minors. They thought that another club probably wouldn't want him given the money attached to him, especially nowadays because roster spots are the premium. The 60-day injury list hasn't opened yet. Spring training is not for another week, but for lack of better words, they gambled wrong, and now they don't have Andy Ibanez. I guess the only thing that they really got relief from is financial relief because it is 1.2 mil plus 110% tax. The Dodgers were comfortable paying a guy 1.2 million plus spending an extra and a 1.3 mil plus 110% tax. So about 2.6 million just for a dude to play on the minors. And if you're Andy Ibanez, you're probably thinking, well, I'm getting a major league salary elsewhere because let's say in theory, he was to get outrighted and he rejects the minor league assignment. That pretty much tells you that 29 other clubs passed on taking you on that salary on a major league contract. And it probably meant that he was only going to get a minor league contract. So, and there's a big difference between Andy Ibanez making 1.2 mil compared to most of the guys in the minors making what 50K, 60K, or right. If you're on the 40-man roster and you're on optional assignment, maybe it's like what league minimum. So he's making major league salary.
Definitely. Conspiracy theory time. Spring training, they're reporting it. They're all starting to report and all that for spring training, which means you are able to start to move guys to the 60-day IL and free up some 40-man roster spots. And I'm sure the Dodgers will have a couple guys like Brock Stewart that they can move to the 60-day IL. What if, and let me add on top of that, a lot of teams are releasing their spring training invite rosters. I don't think I've seen the Dodgers yet. So conspiracy theory time. Maybe there's another infielder out there. And I'm not talking about Kike Hernandez, who I think is just a lock to come back. And maybe he's healthier than we think as well. That'd be good news. That could be part of the Ibanez decision. Don't know yet. We'll see what happens with Kike's medicals. But yeah, the conspiracy is maybe they realize there's another infielder out there that they just like more, and they're waiting to sign him when they can open up some 40-man roster spots. And maybe they just jumped the gun too quickly on Ibanez, and they thought the market on this other guy was going to be too high. And now there's some notable veterans out there, and their markets probably have collapsed, and the Dodgers are going to pivot. Just going to put that on people's radar. Let's just wait and see what happens.
Yeah, we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. And as you mentioned, Kike Hernandez is pretty much a lock to come back to the organization. When he does interviews with David Vasseri or anybody, he pretty much talks in the first person. He says we when talking about the Dodgers. And yeah, he's pretty much a lock to come back. They're waiting for the 60-day injury list to open. As of now, the only candidate that is a lock to go to the 60-day injury list is Brock Stewart. So they'll place him there. Then they sign Kike Hernandez. And if they need another spot, they're going to put Kike Hernandez onto the 60-day injury list. And I don't know if they're going to sign Evan Phillips too, if they want him back once the 60-day injury list opens in spring training. But that's another signing they could do. They can sign Evan Phillips, and then place him on the 60-day injury list. I have no idea if he's going to pitch at all this year, by the way, because he had Tommy John in June of 2025. So the recovery time could be 12 to 15 months. So that would be what, second half at the very best, more likely September in 2026. So it'll be very interesting to see what they do with the 40-man roster and any other roster moves they want to make if once the injured list, the 60-day injured list opens, and you can clear space on the 40-man roster.
And this kind of guides me to where I wanted to go, thanks to Honey Oats. So we'll answer his question, and then this is a name also worth noting. So, are you more excited for Gavin Stone or River Ryan? Well, first off, to kind of close out your point, I don't know if Gavin Stone is necessarily a lock right now to also avoid the 60-day. I could easily see them moving him to the 60-day IL as they continue to ramp him up and get him ready for the 2026 season. So it's been unconfirmed so far what exactly Gavin Stone's health status is for the 2026 season, but I wouldn't be surprised knowing that he probably won't have a role on the big league roster anyways. You can easily move him to the 60-day IL and let him rehab for essentially a month in the minors. And so he'll be playing while being on the IL, and that counts as rehab. But are you more excited for Gavin Stone or River Ryan? Personally, for me, it's River Ryan. There was just a lot of exciting stuff that came out of his mouth from Dodger Fest. You know, the whole weight gain that I talked about on the last episode, him adding 30 pounds, but he's attributing that to being able to throw 100 miles per hour consistently and upping his velocity and just being more ready for games. But yeah, I mean, the answer is River Ryan. I mean, we saw a small dosage from him in the 24 season, and he just looked electric. So I don't even need to elaborate. It's River Ryan.
It is River Ryan as well. So Gavin Stone is coming back from shoulder surgery, River Ryan from Tommy John. Neither are particularly great injuries to come back from, although a lot of us nowadays, we seem more confident in the pitcher coming back from Tommy John as opposed to shoulder. We saw Gavin Stone, he made every single start for us in 2024 before he went down with a shoulder injury back in September of that year. A lot of us we're thinking maybe it is just shoulder fatigue. We didn't think it was serious, and then by the time the players rolled around, oh, by the way, he just had shoulder surgery. He's out for the rest of the season and next 2025 as well. So River Ryan has the more electric stuff. Gavin Stone is, as of right now, was at the time the more consistent pitcher, because River Ryan only made 5 starts. I believe he was out dueling Paul Skeens against Pittsburgh in 2024, and then of course he had to come out early. Turned out his elbow was effed and he needed to get Tommy John surgery. So to answer your question, the question very briefly, I do believe it is River Ryan. Although there isn't really a clear spot for either of them to make the opening day roster. The only way they make it is if there's an injury, or if somebody like Roki Sasaki he's not very good in spring training. He blows it in spring training or whatever, and they have to send him down to AAA because even with a 6-man rotation, we assume the last 2 spots are going to be filled by Roki Sasaki and Emmett Shea, and the Dodgers did not sign Roki Sasaki to make him a reliever. It just happened that they were able to get something out of him last year after it was pretty much a lost year. He wasn't very good as a starter. His shoulder kept him out for pretty much the entire regular season, and he just happened to ramp up and pitch well enough in the bullpen for him to be used in that role. But he wants to be a starter, and the Dodgers do want Emmett Sheehan starting. So unless there's a significant injury, I mean, there will be. It's the Dodgers, come on. But they're pretty much just waiting for somebody to go down with an injury, essentially, for them to get significant starts on the Major League roster.
So obviously you're a Dodgers fan, but you're also a huge Juan Soto fan. So I'm going to catch you off guard here with our sponsorship, Fanduel. Right now, Juan Soto's regular season home run total for 2026, they've got the line at 37.5. So if you want to take the over, it's -113. If you want to take the under, on 37.5 home runs, also minus 113. What does your gut say, Justin, for Juan Soto's home run total? Do you think he hits above 37.5 home runs, or are you taking the under?
I'm going over. The main reason for that is he spent 2 years in New York. The first year in the Bronx, he hit a career high, I believe, was 41, and then last year he signed that big mega contract with the Mets. So in Flushing, Queens, he surpassed that career high and hit 43. And I believe he'll have even more protection in that lineup. Obviously, Alonso's gone, but we see what the Mets did with their offense. They retooled it. They added Bo Bichette, they added Polanco. They need to bounce back out of Marcus Semien. I don't know if they're going to get that as much as I love him as well, but I think it'll be over.
I can dig it. That's why I had to ask you. So check that one out on Fanduel if you want to ride Justin's pick. Bloodhound Lil Jeff asking who's going to hit the first home run of the season. So
for the Dodgers or in general?
We'll go Dodgers because it'd be too confusing to do otherwise. So they're playing Arizona. Corbin Burns is hurt. I'm guessing Merrill Kelly would probably be their opening day starter as is. So, yeah. I'm just going to pull up real quick who owns Merrill Kelly on the Dodgers, and that's going to kind of influence my decision. So Mookie Betts has had 4 home runs. He's actually had the most home runs. All right, why not? Mookie Betts is going to hit the first home run for the Dodgers in the 2026 season. My logic is he has a 905 career OPS against Merrill Kelly, including 4 home runs.
I'm gonna guess it'll be somebody less expected. I believe it was Tommy Edman who hit the first home run for us last year, if I'm not mistaken. I'm assuming it'll be somebody like Andy Pajas, for example, who's further down the line, who's gonna hit the first home run of the season for us. Can you imagine if it's Miguel Rojas, by the way, the dude who hit the most important home run for us, and then he hit the first home run of the season?
That would be hilarious. I'm just going to try to go through some quick questions real quick and get some of the people that we haven't done a shout out yet for. So thank you, Honey Oats. I'll get to your next one in a second about James Tibbs because that's interesting. But Dodger Dugan, when is the Dodgers 2026 giveaway scheduled going to be released? Yeah, I wish I had that answer because normally I'm not your guy for that. I don't know, to be honest. It should be any week, though, if I had to guess. I think last year it was on February 1st last year. So I think they're kind of lagging. But thank you for listening.
I'm probably going to guess that. By the way, it would be really hilarious if they make Kyle Tucker bobblehead against the Cubs and Edwin Diaz bobblehead against the Mets.
Honey Oats, do you think James Tibbs or Zach Earhart are going to make their Dodgers debut this year? From all accounts, James Tibbs is closer than Earhart, but they would have to add either of them to the 40-man roster for this to even happen. And so right now, the Dodgers don't have an opening on their 40-day roster. So 40-man roster, excuse me. So I think there need to be an injury, but I would think James Tibbs right now is more likely to debut than Earhart at this point in time.
By the way, both were involved in the Dustin May trade.
Yep.
I don't believe either are going to be playing in the major leagues in 2026. Generally, the Dodgers want to keep you down as long as possible because until they have to select you, until they have to protect you from the Rule 5 draft, they're going to keep you down in the minor leagues simply because there are better options than James Tibbs and Earhart. I mean, they just called up Ryan Ward just because they didn't want to lose him for minor league free agency. He's 28, 29. He was PC, the Pacific Coast, the Player of the Year, and even he can't get a spot on this club, and it makes it even harder for them, especially after they signed Kyle Tucker. Not complaining.
Absolutely,
I wanted him.
All right, so our Karina 5 wanted to include you two on his comment below. So for us both, and this is a last call for questions. We got to wrap up the show. It's already been close to an hour, and it's very late for Justin. He's midnight in France. But
No worries, by
So
the
get
way.
your final questions in there. So, guys, what is your go-to meal at Dodger Stadium? For me personally, I don't really like the food at Dodger Stadium. It's hard for me to say there's a go-to spot, but what is it? The reserve level has the Hawaiian barbecue or whatever it's called, Hawaiian bread. God, I'm blanking on what it is, but they've got their sliders and they've got all that stand over there from the Hawaiian bread company. That lately has been my go-to spot. And during the World Series, I think it was them, they randomly had Dole Whip, and that was some bomb Dole Whip.
I don't really have a go-to meal at Dodger Stadium either, but when I had it, the barbecue platter down the field, it was pretty decent right there, and the Japanese platter as well. They opened obviously the minute the year they signed Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. It was fine too. It wasn't particularly great. Obviously, it was overpriced, but it is what it is. You see the money that, that the organization get being poured on back to the field and all that stuff. But the Japanese platter with I think gyoza with some teriyaki chicken on it, it was fine as well. I heard that there's a tomahawk platter for steak, but it costs like 180, and I've not tried that yet,
Oh
and I
yeah,
probably never will.
I'd be scared to spend $180 on a Dodger Stadium steak.
Oh yeah,
Not gonna
me
lie,
too.
because I feel like it wouldn't be $180 value in my opinion. It'd probably be underwhelming.
I'd probably just go to a steakhouse in that case.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Justin. Appreciate having you on. I know it's been an hour. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up and get on out of here?
No, I really cannot wait for the season to start. I really can't wait for even spring training to start. I would love to see how this team gels. It is a pleasant surprise that we got Kyle Tucker and we got Edwin Diaz. The Dodgers had problems where their offense and the bullpen once it came to the playoffs, and they solved both of these issues not just by getting any play. They got the best outfielder and the best reliever out in the open market. They weren't settling for anything less, and I mean with due respect to these guys, like we've been linked to guys like Brendan Donovan, Luis Wilbur Jr., Jaron Duran. With due respect, them Kyle Tucker clears them by a lot, and the same for relievers. So I'm really excited to see how the season comes, and hopefully there's a three-peat.
Yeah, I hate to wrap up the show on a negative note, but it is worth reporting that former Dodgers All-Star at one point, Yasiel Puig, lost his hearing.
Oh.
This is this has been ongoing for years, but this broke like within the last hour. Yasiel Puig was found guilty of lying to investigators in a gambling scandal. So essentially, this is going on in a number of sports now. There's these gambling rings going on, and players get involved. I think Yasiel Puig was already out of baseball by the time he was involved in this, so it wouldn't affect his Major League Baseball ties per se. But I guess when he was asked by the feds, do you know anything about this gambling going on? He lied. He didn't help them, which unfortunately is against the law. And if you don't help law enforcement or the feds in an investigation, there's going to be consequences. And unfortunately for Yasiel Puig, who I don't know exactly how this is all going to work out. I know he's from Cuba, but he's going to be in an American sentencing. But right now he's facing a maximum of 10 years in a federal prison and potentially an additional 5 years for the lying. So he's got the obstruction of justice charge and then the providing false statements. So it's going to be a rough go, unfortunately, for Yasiel Puig. What was your favorite Puig memory, though?
The entire 2013 season, we were buried in the standings. We were buried in the table that we were in last place, and Yasiel Puig was a spark for that 42-8 run. That pretty much led us to win the division that year because of his hot stretch in June, July, August, and that was the first year of this 13-year dominance that we've had, winning the division 12 out of 13 years. The one year we didn't win was the year against San Francisco, 2021, when they won 107, we won 106. But yeah, that's my favorite moment for Yasiel Puig. And yeah, best wishes to him. I didn't follow the trial as well, but yeah, wishing the best for him. And also to respond to, I love the username by the way, hepatitis. See you later. He said Tucker clears all the outfielders that we mentioned, and Tucker only costs cash. That's true because for guys who are not free agents, you have to trade prospects for them. And for Kyle Tucker, he only costs cash. Well, technically, he did cost our third and our sixth highest draft picks because he had a qualifying attached to him. But the Dodgers said to hell with the qualifying offer. We're here to win a World Series in 2026.
So there's a few good Puig moments. Obviously, 2013. I have a specific one in a second, but 2018, the Game 4 home run off Eduardo Rodriguez to give the Dodgers the league, and you've got Kobe Bryant in the background. That's an iconic Puig moment. I also think it was during the 2017 postseason run, if I'm not mistaken, when Yasiel Puig started doing the tongue wag and he was licking the bat, and he has that moment where he slides to third base head first, and you just see his tongue wagging. I think that was during the 2017 World Series run up until they got cheated by the Astros. But in 2013 in particular, one of Puig's first games, I remember against the Atlanta Braves, he hit an 8th inning grand slam. I have to look up the picture. Apparently it was off Corey Guerin against the Atlanta Braves to help the Dodgers go to a 5-0 win. And I think Charlie Steiner was on the television broadcast, or I'm just combining it with what I heard on the radio, but he hits the grand slam, and I'm pretty sure Charlie Steiner, in full exciting exclamation, goes, "You can't even write this in Hollywood."
I think you're probably right about that. And yeah, I was thinking about 2018 Game 4, but yeah, we know what happened after that, about that game and the rest of the series. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to the Incline Dodgers podcast, again presented by TickPick, Fanduel, and BLEAV. If you're listening on the audio feed, hit that subscribe button. We'll probably be back Monday or Tuesday, if I had to guess. We're going to start talking World Baseball Classic soon as well. And for those watching on YouTube, leave a comment below. Let us know your thoughts on the Dodgers DFAing Anthony Banda. Was it the right move or the wrong move? But thank you guys for watching and listening. Everyone have a great weekend ahead, and go Dodgers.